The world in which we're parenting in has changed so much. The needs of babies and infants has not changed. What if we taught parents to really proactively tag team? You know, we say fit your oxygen mask, but my plane is crashing here. I've no idea what's up and down. It's sometimes about being willing to ask for help. One of the most powerful, most caring things you could do as a parent from your very first day as a parent all the way through raising kids.
All right, we are here for things nobody tells you about your baby's cries. Now, I've got Genevieve Muir here, or Jen, as I like to call you. Now, Jen and I go back a little bit. I know, for this podcast, it was really important for me to have guests that obviously we've known for many years and really align with, I guess, your values and your approach when it comes to parenting. I've personally learnt a lot from you, Jen. Jen is, of course, a social worker. She's a parenting educator. She's an author. And what else are you, Jen? You've got lots of things.
Mother of four.
Well, you've got a bit of experience there as well.
Got some experience. And I work in a maternity unit helping parents who are usually a couple of days post having their first baby. And I run all of the classes with what to expect in the first 12 weeks. And I also work with parents who are having subsequent children with helping them with how to support their older children in the adjustment into becoming a big brother or sister.
Can I tell you, I've been in a few of those classes and, you know, you're learning all sorts of things that I really didn't need in the heat of the moment, but actually it's the practical stuff. It's like you're saying, you know, something as simple as introducing a new baby into the family or
understanding the emotional impacts of learning how to breastfeed, understanding the emotional impacts of how it makes you feel when your baby cries, and understanding that you're not alone in some of those experiences can make such a big difference to people's adjustment.
Now, obviously this podcast is all about the things nobody tells you, and I want to start off, I'm going to throw one at you.
Yes.
What was the thing that comes to mind the minute I ask you, what is something that nobody told you that you wish you had known?
Two things come to mind. One, and it's not that no one told me, because I think sometimes people can tell you, but you don't really understand it at that visceral level. But I remember having my first baby and I sent him off to the nursery and, you know, it felt like a second later. This midwife bustles in through the door, she wheels the baby in, she turns the lights on, she goes, "Time to feed." And I said, "Oh no, you don't understand. I just fed him." And she's like, "Yeah, no, it's time to feed again." And I knew that babies fed every 3 to 4 hours. I didn't really realise that that's from the beginning of the feed, not the end. And so you sort of think in your mind you've got 3 to 4 hours after the feed.
Yes.
And, you know, it takes like an hour to feed and then it takes a while to settle the baby. And so it felt like I just got into sleep.
Yes.
And in she came and she was like, "Darling, this is it. This is 3 to 4 hours for the next like however long." And I remember just thinking, oh my gosh. So it's not that I didn't technically know, but I felt like I didn't know, or I didn't really understand exactly how that would feel.
Well, I had no idea. I mean, you hear about cluster feeding and you hear about all of these things and like you, this whole idea of sending your baby off to the nursery and they keep bringing them back, you think, geez, I just want some sleep.
Totally. I think the other thing I didn't have an understanding of would be how it would make me feel when my baby cried. I knew babies cried. I knew that was healthy. I knew some ideas about what I would do to settle my baby and I thought I would be fine. I think nothing can quite prepare you as a parent for what it feels like when your baby cries and you can't fix it or solve it.
Yes.
I think when our babies cry and we can fix it and we solve it, we feel amazing.
Yes.
But when they cry and the things we do, like offer them a feed or try to get them to sleep or we try to settle them and they keep crying, that can be a really distressing experience for parents, mostly because we don't fully understand exactly why babies cry. There are some reasons that are physical, there are some reasons that are actually about our baby just having a cry.
And I think it's almost like when you first have your baby and you do have that win or you do have that moment where you fixed it, you think, yes, I've nailed it, we're in a flow, but then something happens, you know, a new developmental milestone and they change. You know, the strategies you've used previously aren't working.
Yeah, I sort of think we come into parenting expecting ourselves to know how to parent because we think of it as a natural thing.
Yes.
Like breastfeeding, it's a natural thing. If I've got breasts and that's a baby, well, that should work even if it's a bit of hard work, it should work. But it's just not always the case. While it is a natural thing, it's a learnt skill. And I think with parenting, it's exactly the same. We think, well, I should know how to parent this child because it's my child.
Yes.
And society almost says, here is your baby, when it cries, you now need to work out what's wrong and fix it.
Yes.
So it's a lot of pressure that gets put on parents when in fact the skill of parenting is something we learn on the job, and it is not something we can be taught in advance, and it is something we learn through trial and error.
Yes.
So I think once we understand that that is how we do it, it does feel a lot better to be clumsily, forging our way through.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned that, because parenting styles, I will quickly jump to that, because I think there is also an expectation that we kind of know how we're going to parent. We're going to be, calm and connected. Yeah. We're going to be this authoritarian. And there are even TV shows that, really put people in these boxes. And I'm in the middle. We've been discussing the books we're both writing at the moment. But it's, I talk about that you don't need to have a set parenting style, and you do have permission to change and evolve, because the parent I thought I was going to be, I thought I was going to be the go with the flow. That's what my mum did. It worked for her. She fed when I wanted to be fed. I slept everywhere. I think there's pictures of me as a 5-year-old drinking out of a boob because it was my sister's milk. She was, but, this is the 80s and it's very different now. Did you just get a visual of that? Thanks, Mum. But it's awesome. I actually thought that, and I think that was the issue with my personal experience, is that I had this expectation it would feel organic and it would feel natural. And then all of a sudden I had the baby. I was one of those annoying mums that came to mother's group with the baby that would sleep the whole time, the perfect hair. She was born with a hairstyle. She would look like a little doll, and I'd just sit there. So I had a really false setup in those first 6 weeks. And then all of a sudden, holy moly, things changed.
Personality came through.
Hasn't left. It's just escalated from there. But it's like, I felt like I should be able to respond and get this kind of natural fix for my child. But actually I started realising there's a bit of a method to the madness. And that's when I called in Chris, who we're going to chat to later.
Yeah, totally. I definitely had an idea about the parent I wanted to be. I'm the daughter of a therapist. I'm a social worker. I read all this information about attachment, and I wanted to do something called continuum parenting. We don't talk about it much these days.
I was going to say, I don't know
it's
if
a
I've heard of
serious
it.
form of attachment parenting, where you basically carry the baby for 5 years. You just never put the baby down, right?
Wow. I actually have heard experts talk about something similar in the past, and I was like, I'm a mum of 3. We're not doing that.
So that was my plan. And we started out very much trying to do that. We had this first baby, and we're just holding him and patting him and rocking him, and we're constantly kind of trying to hold this baby. And he's just screaming and screaming and screaming. And then my husband, Andy, turns to me one day, he goes, I think this baby just wants to be put down. And I went, oh my God, let's just try it. So we fed him, we swaddled him, we put him in his little Moses basket, we put on some white noise, and we sort of just gave a bit of movement but turned away.
Yeah.
And he went completely quiet. He stared at the side of that Moses basket for 20 minutes. I thought, because I'm a anxious first-time parent, oh my gosh, he's having a seizure. We've broken the baby.
Yeah.
He was not having a seizure. He went to sleep. He had the best sleep he had had in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And we learned something about our baby that day. We're like, okay, I don't know why that worked, but we keep doing that.
Yes.
So what we learned was he went better being put down sooner rather than later. He learnt better without eye contact, and he went better with just a bit of movement, a bit of support to sleep, but not in our arms. What's interesting, and my son, but he's now almost 16. We went away on a family holiday over summer, and he chose to sleep on a bathroom floor in Tokyo rather than sleep in the room with all of us, because he does not settle well in the room with all of us snoring and making noise. He's a baby that never really settled in my arms. I think only once in a whole year he fell asleep in my arms at a party, and always needed a strong routine, needed his own space to sleep. Sleeps beautifully, still does. And actually once we got out of the way of what he needed, he settled. So continuum parenting was out the door and routine was in. And I also called Chris over for some help, and he went really beautifully. And yet I've been humbled again and again, because then you have different children that have different needs. And my third, by contrast, was the kind of baby where if I just held him that little bit longer, if I just let him drop into that full deep sleep, if I responded to his cries sooner rather than later, which was the opposite for my first, he was feeling safer and more able to settle. So I think ultimately we get the kids we get.
Yes.
And that's what's so humbling about parenting. There's what we bring to the table. There's the ideas we have and the parent we want to be. There's what comes up for us personally in the moment. So we're going to have feelings about feelings from the minute that first baby cries that are going to be playing a role in how we feel in that moment. But in addition, we get the kid we get.
Yes.
And I think that is the biggest driver of kind of what determines how we go and what works, because every single child is different.
It's so different.
Yeah.
And I think this is what happens sometimes when you've got, say mothers groups, and I love my mothers group, we're still friends. And, something's working for someone, so you all want to jump on that idea, but we don't actually realise there are so many different things going on. Like you say, it's, how you respond in that moment. It's what your kid needs. And yes,
completely.
All three of my kids.
So I always say we're all way more complicated than a style.
Yes.
We are a product of our experiences to date,
Yep.
how we've made sense of that, right? So you're not just set by what happened to you, you're also set by how you've made sense of that as you've grown. And then the final thing is the child we get and their needs.
Now, I love something that you said there about how we respond or how we feel when our baby cries, because crying is that thing that can trigger people. I mean, we're sleep deprived, or, we get anxious if they don't stop crying.
Yeah.
I would love you to share a little bit about why it is, such a different response for everyone.
Yeah, well, I think a midwife at the Mater said it best actually once to me. She said, I had settled thousands of babies. I knew exactly what to do when a baby cried. And then I had my own, and it started to cry, and I looked at it and I thought, what do you want? And I love that, because I think it really encapsulates what happens for us personally. You can have whatever feelings you have about crying, and then you have your own child. And there's a few things going on. One, our babies' cries are designed by nature to distress us.
Yes.
So we will instantly have high cortisol. We're going to feel tense. We're going to feel this real urge to do something about that. Now, that's nature's way of making sure we don't sleep through their cries and we feed them. That's how we survive as a species.
Yeah.
But it's really important to have a sense of the fact you feel distressed is really biologically normal.
Yes.
But I think the second reason we feel really distressed is because, and it's something we touched on before, society kind of says, this is your baby. When it cries, your job is to fix it or solve it or stop it. And I always say to parents when I'm working with them, we've actually got that wrong. The message is not quite right. On some of the time, our babies cry, and our job is to fix it or solve it, because what they're crying is to communicate a need. And that might be a need for hunger, for comfort, or for sleep, usually, or a nappy change. They're the kind of core reasons the baby will cry. If we meet that need, the baby will cry. We're missing this whole other reason babies cry. So babies are born with all their emotions, and the only way they've got to express those and therefore lower their cortisol is to have a cry.
Yes.
So there will be really specific times that baby's going to cry a lot. One of those times is during the night in the first week. Now, that's going to happen because our babies are born with day-night confusion. It's also going to happen because we make more of the hormone that makes breast milk at night. So there's the two factors going on. But also, they just got here. Around night 3, they kind of wake up out of 2 days of sleeping quite heavily following the birth, and they're like, where am I?
Yes.
This is so different. There are so many skills, and they're going to cry a lot, and they're going to feel really hard to settle, really normal part of the first week.
Yeah.
Often crying will settle, but it then starts to build up to a peak of crying that happens at around 6 to 8 weeks. And that peak of crying is really interesting because most babies will be crying by then around 3 to 3.5 hours a day.
Yes.
But it's happening at a different time of day. It's happening between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. at night. It's called the witching hour. It should be called the witching hours because it's more than 1 hour. And they won't be crying the whole time consistently and like at 10 out of 10 level. It'll be a combination of grizzling crying and kind of pretty fractious. And that's pretty normal. And most babies will have kind of a significant peak of crying that happens between that 6 and 8 week mark, and it lasts about 7 to 10 days.
Yeah.
I love parents knowing about that as well. Because if we don't know about that, we're going to find ourselves wondering, have I run out of milk?
Yeah.
Has the baby got reflux? When what we're seeing is a really significant peak of crying. What I think is extra interesting about that peak of crying is that it coincides with the first time the baby will smile meaningfully at its parents, which is a little insurance policy, so you don't sell them on eBay. Because they're a little bit difficult that week.
I know it's, you're like, oh, and then you're like, oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah. So it makes up for all of it, I swear. So when you think about the effort a newborn goes into that first smile, which they're working on from the minute they're born, they work out who their parents' faces are at birth. they will look longer and harder at those faces than any other face or shape, and they are working towards that smile because their survival depends on it for 6 weeks. So the effort it takes for them to build those skills and finally achieve that skill is huge.
Wow.
And by the end of the day, they're tired. And that's really what we're looking at that peak of crying. I love parents knowing that once it does peak, it heads really rapidly down towards the 12th week where babies are reaching, rolling, interacting, happy to be here, no longer with that startle reflex, feeding really well and crying less than they were at birth. And that's kind of that pattern that we see. And understanding crying, understanding it makes us feel terrible, but understanding what to predict, all of those things can be so helpful.
It can be. And it's interesting because I remember when I first had Ishk, I looked up all the different sounds and what they meant, the meh and the bat, and I was like, I remember being in the moment, I'm like, I can't tell the difference between that. And it took Chris to obviously help me through rhythms and feeding and sleep and expectations, but I was just like, how does anyone know what's going on?
Yeah, I remember that was a big thing for me too. And look, maybe there is some science in it, but often really I think parenting is a little bit of knowledge combined with a bit of trial and error. Like it's been 3 hours since I fed. Yeah, let's try a feed.
Yes, exactly. And it's interesting that this whole concept that we should be able to fix things, but also good and bad babies. I hear that a lot. You know, I've got a good baby; they sleep all the time. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
I've got a 6-year-old that still sometimes comes in the middle of the night. Sorry, people. Now, a lot of this kind of response time and this, learning and trial and error. I know that a lot of what you do is around connection. I mean, how important is connection during those early stages, and what does it look like?
Look, it's so important, but also I think it's the really nice bit that gets us through. And I think the thing I would want any new parent to know is that you do not have to love every moment of parenting.
Yeah.
You can absolutely hate some moments and still be a really good parent.
Yes.
But I think it's understanding the bond and understanding how much is happening that really it's the glimmers or it's the really beautiful part of those messy early days, but it also builds the foundation for enjoying your child. The thing I just find so incredible is how wired our babies are for that connection from birth. We know that if you're lucky enough to get some beautiful eye contact in those moments after birth, we know how incredible that first gaze can be. I've been lucky enough to have it a few times. But even if that doesn't happen because you wind up having an emergency Caesar or the birth doesn't go to plan, what I want parents to know is that it's around 10 days old that babies will start to open their eyes for longer. And they will do this thing where they'll kind of really gaze into their parent or caregiver's eyes for often these periods of up to sort of 10 minutes, usually at the start of a feed or when they're in the bath, those kind of times. Yes, so beautiful. And it's this really intense stare where it feels like they're boring into your soul. That's kind of how it feels and looks. And what's actually happening in their brains is the incredible bit. So while a baby is doing that, they're mapping your face because you are their first love. They're building the whole right side of their brain, which wires them for relationship and attachment. So all these incredible neurons are firing with those early gazes that's happening. But I think what's so interesting is they will look longer at their parents' two faces than any other face or shape. So they innately know what matters from the minute they get out of the womb.
Wow.
And this is the really interesting bit. They know their parents' voices by 2 days old. And in fact, on a brain scan, we can look at babies' cortisol levels when their parents talk. When their parents are talking at 2 days old, their cortisol levels start to drop and their brain activity sort of lights up even in their sleep. And I find that so incredible because as a species, we're so underdeveloped in so many ways. They can't even hold their heads up. They're not doing much very well. And yet they can recognise their parents' voices even in their sleep.
Wow.
And even as a parent is just ordering room service from the hospital room, a baby's cortisol levels is dropping because they're like, yep, that's my parent. That's my safe base. Why I love parents to know that is just how powerful they are and just how simple it is to actually meet the needs of babies. So when we look at it, for a newborn, the way we meet their needs is we look at them and we pat them and we touch them and we hold them and cuddle them and comfort them. So it might be skin to skin, but it might be just those reassuring pats and touches that mimic the womb.
Yeah.
It's talking out loud to them and about their world. And it's being there when they're struggling, saying out loud it's okay to cry and holding them when they struggle. And I love parents knowing this because especially modern parents are parenting in a really different world. The pressures on modern parenting today are huge. We have more information than we've ever had. The village has changed, not all for bad. There are some really beautiful things, but it is different to the world our parents parented us in. And so they're parenting in this really complex world. And while the world in which we're parenting in has changed so much, the needs of babies and infants has not changed. And in your baby's mind, they don't mind if you're struggling to breastfeed. They don't mind if the birth didn't go to plan. They don't mind if you're totally freaking out and you're kind of not sure what you're doing and you feel so anxious because your hormones are plummeting because you just keep turning up. And that's all they're looking for. So I love parents knowing about that and how significant that bond is, and that we don't have to do much, and our babies are very, very cruisy with how we're doing. And I think when we know that and we know how much is happening in those little gazes, and that every time we touch them or every time we just talk out loud, they're hearing that and they're responding, and that is building the bond, I think that's such a simple thing that can bring parents back to what matters when they're feeling overwhelmed.
And I always think back, and the one thing I always tell people is to not be afraid to say no to visitors and just bunker down in those early days. And that's something I started doing. And, you know, everyone wants to flock in there, or you feel like you have to meet everyone for coffee. But actually, you know, that is my fondest memory of becoming a first-time mum, is just being on that lounge, you know, those really slow days, getting to know each other, and just like, for me, that was the most precious thing.
Yeah, I think the power to know that self-care can look like saying, just drop the meal off, but we don't want anyone coming in today. And self-care can be, we really want everyone to come in and look at our baby. Like both are okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's what works for you and what you need, I guess, and the amount of support you have. Jen, I love that you mentioned about the self-care element, because I know that looks completely different for everyone. I mean, especially some getting more sleep than others. I mean, what do you generally advise parents, you know, when they've got no idea what to expect?
Yeah, I think we tell parents you need to fit your own oxygen mask, and that's really tricky advice for brand new parents, because we're recovering from the biggest physical event our body will ever go through, no matter how birth goes. We have hormones dropping through the floor. We have often a lot of anxiety firing through the roof, whether you are the birthing parent or the non-birthing parent. You're going to have a lot of adrenaline pumping through your body because you just became a parent. You are solely responsible for keeping this tiny human alive, right? It's a lot going on. And then we say to parents, just fit your own oxygen mask. And that can feel like a massive ask and a step that just they can't get to on the to-do list. So what I like to say is, let's break that down a little bit. Instead of asking parents to fit their own oxygen masks, like number one,
or sleep when the baby sleeps.
Sleep when the baby sleeps, which terrible advice, and can't stand that one either. What I like parents to think of instead is that one of the most powerful, most caring things you could do as a parent, from your very first day as a parent all the way through raising kids, is really, as you catch yourself thinking, I'm having a really hard moment, this baby's crying so much, feeding's not going as I wish, the birth didn't go as I wished, I'm struggling, I'm not sleeping when the baby's sleeping, anything like that, if we could stop, almost put our hands on our heart and say, I'm doing the best that I can.
Yep.
I've only been doing this for 2 days. I just became a parent. It's the biggest job shift you'll ever have, and there is no training. It's something that happens on the job. That self-compassion is one of the best things you can do. That's going to make such a difference to how your next move goes. It's going to make such a difference to your ability to accept help, because you're going to be worthy of it. Because you're saying, well, I only just got here. I'm not meant to know everything. So that difference is huge. And also that self-compassion flows on to our baby. I'm doing the best that I can, and so is my baby. And suddenly it's okay for us to be muddling through, not having all the answers. It's easier said than done, but I think it is one of the most powerful, genuinely powerful self-care strategies that we can use. I have a 16-year-old. I am muddling through still. And I often have to catch myself when I've responded badly to something that is new for me in this stage of parenting and go, I've never parented a teen before. I'm doing the best that I can. And know that that's enough, that I'm showing up, and that's enough for me as that parent of that teen, and it is enough for the parent of the newborn. So I think that's really important. I've got 2 more tips, and this is more about the relationship, I think, because often we do have a baby with a partner. If we don't and we're single parenting, your co-parent in this scenario might be your mum, or it might be whoever is around to kind of support you in any way. So my first tip is, rather than feeling like we should know when we need to take a break, which is often advice we give to parents. And, I would have been there just going, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And my husband would be sitting in the corner going, she's not fine, but I don't know what to do. What if we taught parents to really proactively tag team?
Yes.
And one of the things that my hubby and I learnt to do was actually tap each other out. So I love talking about tapping out.
I love this. You have told me this before.
And what we would do is I'd be there flipping out, not knowing I'm flipping out, because that is the nature of flipping out. We say fit your oxygen mask, but my plane is crashing here. I've no idea what's up and down. And he would say, go have a shower. I got this. Or I'm going to have a turn or whatever. And some people think, I don't know how I'd feel if my partner sort of said, you're done here. But if we can really proactively do that, I think it makes a difference. Almost like we don't need to all be in the muck together at all times. If the baby's having a tough night, tag team. Tap your partner out. I'll come back in 2 hours. I'll give you a break. See what happens. We'll just roll with it. We've just got to survive this moment. So I think that can be really helpful.
And is that something you would have the conversation, I guess, before the baby arrives?
Yeah, I try to talk to parents. I mean, before is ideal, but I talk to them around 2 days after and really talk about this. And by the time I talk about it, as I say, I'm there going, I'm fine. They're like,
yeah. Because there's something in lived
this
experience.
has already happened.
you're 2 days in.
And they laugh. I go, tapping each other out is a lot more fun than the other way you can do it, which is the competition of who's the most tired, which we've all played that game and it never ends well.
I tell you what.
I think knowing that self-care is also sometimes about setting boundaries. It's sometimes about being willing to ask for help.
That's really hard to do, ask for help when you want to do it yourself.
It is. So that's why that first piece of advice, which is self-compassion, matters so much. So if you can really be kind to yourself and go, oh yeah, that's okay. I'm panicking because I care deeply about this. Yes. But actually I've never done this before and it's okay not to know everything. Then I'm in a better position to think, I'll be willing to be tapped out, or I'm going to ask for help. My mum did say she'd offer to cook me a meal, or the neighbour did offer this or that. I'm going to say Yes. I'm going to say, actually, that'd be great today. Thank you so much. I'm going to be vulnerable. But also there is something really powerful in saying, I know we said visitors would work today. It's actually not a great day. Can we arrange it? We really appreciate you. Thank you so much for caring. Saying no, or saying, I really want you to sanitize your hands before you touch my baby, or those little things that can feel a little bit awkward. You're learning to be the advocate for your baby and for your little family unit. And I think that is very much self-care as well. So I think those are ideas that can make a difference. And the other thing is, not to think of self-care as the day spa or maybe what it was before. So you're going to be a new person after having a baby. You're going to roll into a completely new period where it is natural to slip away from the things that were self-care before and struggle to do it because you feel very much like, I am responsible for this baby. It's hard to get away. So I like to think of self-care as mini bits of self-care, and maybe rather than self-care, what if we think of it as kindness? What's kind for me? Kind for me might be finishing my coffee. It might be taking a deep breath before picking up my baby. It might be saying no to visitors. It might be just having a shower with the door closed and some nice body wash. That might be enough. So I think those little things, but mostly being very gentle with yourself and compassionate as any response is the way you're responding. It takes time to adjust. It takes 7 years to fully adjust, really, in terms of matrescence and the process of becoming a mother. And every time you have a new child, it's a whole new ball game again of adjusting to that baby and also who you get. I always say I've had 4 babies. They all were born in the same month, which is crazy. They all were the exact same birth weight at birth.
Crazy.
All 3.5 kilos.
That's crazy.
On the dot, which is average. So every time I made the mistake of thinking, oh, well, I know you and I know what I'm doing. And every single time I got proved wrong. Within 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the baby's like, you don't know me. And completely different things settled that baby, completely different relationship form between me and that baby, different connections, different feelings, different attachments. And every single time I was humbled by this process of getting to know a brand new human. So I say to parents, if we can dial down the pressure of that information overload and know that the information is mostly pretty good, it just will not all apply to your baby.
Exactly.
And that's going to happen every time. And so I think knowing that you're not failing, but that's just not the right information for you. And particularly if it doesn't feel good, let it just flow over you and out the window. It's not for you. And that doesn't mean you're failing. It's just not for you.
It's just not for you. And I love that you say that with each child, because you know, a lot of people say, oh, but I forgot the information and this isn't working, and that might not be that. It's just that's the first experience for you and your baby. I remember you saying it once about breastfeeding as well, that you had breastfed one baby and then it was different for the next. And I think, yeah, if we go into it knowing that actually this is the first time you're doing it in that situation, then...
Yeah, I think we need to think of it as a dance, and it's a dance between a parent and a child, and the dance is the relationship forming, and that's going to be completely unique every single time.
And I love seeing the personalities of your kids. Obviously, your 4 beautiful boys, they are all so different.
They are, yeah.
Obviously benefited greatly from, you know, who you are. But that's what I love about the content that you do, Jen, because it's so practical, because you've been there, you've done it.
Yeah, I've lived it.
And you've lived it. You well and truly lived it. You've gone out the other side in some respects.
Still living it.
Jen, anything that you would say as a lasting kind of, you know, this is what I want all parents to know? It's a very big question because you've just told us so many brilliant things, but do you have this sort of thing that you constantly go back to, that you say to people?
It gets so much easier day by day, feed by feed, sleep by sleep. Everything gets more rhythmic and it changes. It's constantly evolving, and that's what I want parents to know. I think we often say to parents of a newborn, oh, just you wait, it gets harder. And I just disagree. I think the hardest week of parenting, even if you have a really good experience, you hit the ground running, recovering from birth, and learning to read the cues of this baby for the very first time. Yeah. And while it can be fantastic depending on the baby you get, or excruciatingly hard depending on your experience, it is the steepest learning curve, that first experience. Totally. And I think that particularly for people with 1 or 2 really little humans, where you are fully regulating all of their emotions 24/7, you're sleep deprived, it's a really hard time. And while I'm in the trenches now with 2 teenagers and 1 almost tween, I'm in a different stage, and many people will say that's tricky. It is. It brings its own challenges, but it will never be as emotionally and physically intensive as those early years as you're learning. So just give yourself grace. Yes. It is really hard. It feels hard because it is hard, and grab those little pockets of connection and joy and eye contact, because that's where the magic lies.
Oh, it sure does. Jen, always such beautiful sage advice. Thank you. And I just love, the practicality of it all. And I think there's going to be so many people that take a lot of benefit from everything that you've shared.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. I mean, I'm sure I'm probably going to see you next week. Thanks.
Thank you.